Hello everyone and welcome to your daily news summary, specially curated for UPSC aspirants. It's November 17th, 2025, and we have a lot to cover, so let's just jump right in.
So, what's on the docket today? Well, we've got a massive development in the Red Fort terror investigation. We're also going to take a close look at some high-stakes Indian diplomacy happening in Russia, and then we'll head over to Brazil, where the crucial COP30 climate talks are, well, hitting some serious speed bumps.
So, here's how we're going to tackle all this. We've broken it down by themes that line up directly with your UPSC syllabus. We'll start with national security, then jump to international relations, polity, the environment, and finally a few quick briefs on the economy and S&T, before we wrap it all up. All right, let's dive right in. Our first section is a really critical update on internal security, and this is a hot topic for your GS Paper 3.
Okay, big news from the National Investigation Agency. They've made a huge arrest in the Red Fort blast case, a man named Amir Rashid Ali, who owned the car used in the attack. But honestly, the real story here is the language the NIA is now using. For the very first time, they've officially called the driver a suicide bomber and the car a vehicle-borne IED. Now, this is way more than just semantics. This changes the entire framing of the investigation.
So, what exactly is a VBID? Well, you've probably heard the term car bomb. That's essentially what it is, an improvised explosive device delivered by a vehicle. The fact that the NIA is now formally using this term tells us they're not just looking at this as a simple blast. No, they're seeing it as a calculated act of vehicular warfare, and that has some very, very serious implications for our national security.
Investigators are now piecing together Dr. Nabi's final hours, and the details they're finding are pretty chilling. Just about 17 hours before the blast, he was at an ATM in New, and a security guard there has given this crucial piece of testimony. He said Nabi claimed a medical emergency, seemed really anxious, withdrew 76,000 rupees in cash, and then was seen driving away erratically with some suspicious items covered up in the back seat. Every single one of these details is now a key piece in this massive puzzle.
And the investigation is really branching out now. On the forensics side, they found 3 9mm cartridges at the blast site. And that's interesting because that type is usually used by security forces, so it adds a whole other layer of mystery. Meanwhile, raids are happening all across Haryana, and a friend of Dr. Nabi, who owns a medical shop, has been brought in for questioning. It really feels like the NIA is closing in on a much wider network.
All right, next up, let's shift our focus to India on the world stage, a core topic, as you know, for GS Paper 2. So, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is in Moscow right now, and it's important to understand he's basically wearing two different hats. First, he's got a super important one-on-one meeting with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov. This is all about laying the groundwork for President Putin's upcoming visit to India. But second, he's there for a multilateral reason. He's leading the Indian team at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO Council meeting. Oh, and a little side note. Officials have made it very clear that no bilateral meeting with Pakistan's representative is on the books. Meanwhile, if we look closer to home, India's relationship with Bhutan is getting stronger and stronger, and it's a really great example of a partnership that covers all the bases. India is deeply involved in some of Bhutan's major strategic projects, like their national service program and the super ambitious Gelaphu Mindfulness City. We're also boosting connectivity with new checkposts and rail links, continuing our long-standing energy partnership, and, crucially, deepening our security talks to counter Chinese influence in the region. This really paints a picture of India's multifaceted neighborhood-first policy in action. Now for a look at polity and governance, which is, of course, another cornerstone of GS Paper 2.
And this brings us to a really fundamental question, one that's being debated right now at the absolute highest levels of our judiciary.
So, check out this statement from the Chief Justice of India, B.R. Gavai. He's making it clear that he believes the creamy layer concept should apply not just to other backward classes, but to scheduled castes as well. Basically, what he's saying is that the most affluent members of the community should be excluded from reservation benefits. The idea is that the benefits should be targeted to those who are most deprived. For example, should the child of an IAS officer be competing for the same benefits as the child of a poor farm worker? It's a hugely significant observation coming from the CGI.
In other news, an FIR has been filed over in Sambhal, Uttar Pradesh. Apparently, 2 members of the Shahi Jama Masjid's management committee are being accused of obstructing a team from the Archaeological Survey of India while they were trying to inspect the monument. The case basically alleges they stopped government officials from doing their jobs. All right, let's switch gears to the environment, a critical component of GS Paper 3. So, the COP30 climate talks happening in Brazil are at a really tricky point, with 4 major issues that nobody can seem to agree on. On one side, you have developing nations, including India, pushing really hard for clear promises on financial aid from developed countries. They're also worried about new trade restrictions that are being tied to climate goals. On the other side, you have small island nations and the EU who are sounding the alarm about the gap between climate promises and what's actually needed to hit that 1.5-degree target. And then the developed countries are pushing for stricter reporting from everyone. As you can see, the negotiations are pretty divided. Closer to home, Delhi is dealing with a pretty nasty water contamination problem. Let me break it down for you, because it's a bit of a plumbing nightmare. In Haryana, you've got 2 drains that run side by side. Drain 8 carries clean water to Delhi. Simple enough. But Drain 6, right next to it, is full of polluted industrial and domestic wastewater. Now the problem is, Drain 6 overflows a lot, and when it does, all that polluted water gets mixed into the clean water in Drain 8. The result? A huge spike in ammonia levels in Delhi's water, which forces treatment plants to shut down and disrupts the whole city's supply. And now for a couple of quick but really important updates on the economy and S&T, both super relevant for GS Paper 3. So it looks like the government is thinking about a major shakeup for its 3 big state-owned general insurance companies. We're talking about National Insurance, Oriental Insurance, and United India Insurance. A few different options are on the table. One idea is to merge 2 of the weaker companies with the more profitable New India Assurance. Another idea is to just combine all 3 into one giant company. And a third option involves merging 2 and then getting the third one ready for privatization. This could be a really big shift in the public sector insurance world.
On the tech front, check out these 2 really cool innovations in road building that are also great for the environment. First, there's the use of steel slag, which is basically just a waste product from making steel, as a super durable substitute for natural stone. And second, there are these things called plastic geocells. They're these honeycomb-shaped grids made from recycled plastic that make roads much more stable, especially in tough areas like Leh and Lahal Spiti. It's a fantastic way to deal with plastic waste.
That brings us to the end of today's main headlines. So let's just take a moment here, take a step back, and put all of this in perspective. You know, when you look at all the news today, it's pretty clear the challenges are coming from all sides. You've got an immediate terror threat in the capital, complex diplomatic maneuvering, deep constitutional debates, and these slow-burning, long-term environmental crises. And this brings me to a final question for you to think about. How does a nation like ours balance these immediate, urgent security threats with its long-term goals in things like diplomacy, economic stability, and environmental protection? Thinking about how all these pieces connect is absolutely key for developing that analytical mindset you need for the civil services. That's all for today. Thanks so much for tuning in.